Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Still Standing, the Dog Show podcast, brought to you by the Canine Chronicle, celebrating over 50 years of excellence. And that's a long time. I'm Wayne Cavanaugh,
Kimberly Meredith.
and we are here tonight to talk to you about a couple things. One of the things that is always fun to talk about is a judging approval process. And Kim and I have been talking about this off camera a little bit, and boy, there's lots to talk about. But I think we were both agreed, right, Kim, about the current system's a pretty good one.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I think so.
I mean, there's an opportunity. It gives you I know a lot of people that are listening probably aren't judging or applying to be one, so we don't want to get too carried with the details. But this system has changed over the years, well, since I've been involved, um, which is all my life, and I'm sure you've seen some changes too, Kim, right?
Yeah, like 20 or more.
Yeah. Remember the Million Points of
Yeah.
Light? That was that was my favorite one. Or was it 1,000 Points of Light? I do a lot of stuff for that one. But the
Yeah.
I can tell you that I just had written about this, so it's fresh in my mind. There was a guy named Leonard Brumby Jr., not to be confused with Leonard Brumby, who was his father, who I think died in the 40s or something. But Mr. Brumby is one of the ones that created this junior showmanship thing originally. So tip of the hat to you. But Len Brumby Jr., who's also long past, he served at the AKC in the late 60s, I think like 68 through 70 something. You heard the name,
Yeah.
Kim? Len Brumby, this guy?
Of course. Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
he was an important dude. And back then, you have to remember in the 60s, for all you whippersnappers, uh, there weren't all that many dog shows. In fact, there was about a third of the number that we have now. And a whole lot of them were in the middle Atlantic states where I grew up, the hotbed at the time, from New England to Virginia, but mostly from New Jersey to Connecticut, and Massachusetts, right around New York. That's what the big shows were. And in California, of course. And then Chicago, a little pocket there. But the guys that worked there, and there was Jack LaFleur, Bill Stifel, there's a few, but Brumby was at the shows every weekend because he could be. There weren't that many of them, and they weren't far from New York. So, and he would fly, of course, to California too, but he was out every weekend. And he was a good dog man. His father was. They came from England bringing some cool breed over. I don't know. It's an old 30s, 20s. They were bringing dogs over from Europe. So they've been around a while. And he knew a good dog. And he knew what good dog people looked like and good dog judges. And I was talking to our friend Pat Trotter, Kim. Do we not love our Pat Trotter?
Oh, the best. The best
Yeah.
ever.
And we had great discussions about this. And but she was telling me that they would walk up to her, those guys, and say, you've been breeding elk hounds, some really good ones. Um, and then I think one of somebody, not Brumby, said, you should apply for elk hounds. And Pat, of course, was hysterical. Yeah, I'll judge a lot, but there are no elk hounds. I didn't make them, So, but so she waited until someone said, maybe you can have more than that. But Brumby would walk up to you and he'd say, you need to apply for the working group, Kim. And you'd say, I'm not ready for the working group. And he'd say, yeah, you are. And that was it. Case closed. Pardon me. Mr. Brumby's got me all choked up. So there were systems like that back in the day. When you started, Kim, what was the system like? Do you even remember? Because we're back in
I
the
started playing in 1992,
yeah, that was
and it
way
was
later.
kind of the beginning of I
I
only
was.
have four numbers in my
Me
judging,
too.
four numbers. I had this is really a funny story. I had this
What is
young
your number,
gal
by the way?
call me
What is your number?
595978. Four
Five five
nine four.
7 1. I'm 400 before you.
Yeah.
But
Well,
now they
and you should
approve
be given
400
credit
again.
for that, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, really.
So,
Please.
yeah, you should be. That's a whole other story, but we'll go
Yeah,
into that some other time.
one of these
So
days.
that's kind of the beginning of, and Maribeth had a lot to do with it at that point, who
Yeah.
I admire, wholly. But It was, the CEUs, they weren't called CEUs, sorry, but there were points and there were boxes and there were qualifications and, videos counted for this much. If you watch, remember the old AKC videos
Yeah.
that were all shot back east. I mean, you watch those. But also, you got points for reading the AKC Gazette. You used to get at your house and you could actually read like a book, which was great, which has gone
Yeah.
away as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, you had all these qualifications and you had to check the boxes. Also, at that point, we had to have an interview with an AKC rep. Our first interview was not open book, honey. You
Hmm.
sat there in front of the rep and you didn't have your standard. You had nothing. She asked questions, you had to answer them. So there was no open book stuff. So you really did have to know your stuff. And back then it took like, average was 10 years to get a group and a lot of money, quite frankly, very
Hmm.
expensive. But I'm telling you, when you walked into that working group, sporting group, hound group, after 10 years, you knew what you were doing. I mean, you're not going to be perfect because we learn on our exhibitors, unfortunately, but a lot easier, a lot better. I mean, a lot more competent having that longevity trying to get there. And then we had many changes come along from 1992, which you and I were talking about previously, some of which are pretty funny. We had to write an essay where you talked about yourself and how wonderful you were and how many dogs you bred and all of that. This big essay about to show them how wonderful you were, and then that went away. Then we had, remember the unmasking? Do you remember they were masked, the
Yes.
applications? So they didn't
Not us.
really,
We weren't masked.
no,
With
yeah, this was
the
before COVID.
applications, they're
Yeah.
anonymous,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, no names were mentioned, although anyone with half a brain could read it and figure out who you were. I guess probably the
I'm from
only thing that would
California.
help.
I'm applying for Malamutes. Who could that be? I wonder who that.
Exactly, exactly. Or if they hated you, you would try to, make it so they didn't know who you were, depending on, where you're coming from.
Yeah.
What else have we had? We've had, different, eventually after all the different changes we had, it seemed like the more changes, the worse it became.
Yeah.
Now we're back to, I think, pretty much checking boxes, CEUs, qualifications, of course, with the, videos now and everything's been modernized. And so I think what we have now is a pretty good darn system. I really do. Some
I
of the
do
stuff in
too.
the past,
Yeah, I do too. I think one of the things that's good with the system is they're not just asking you to check these boxes, they're giving you opportunities to learn. Here, and they have great breed videos and instructions and seminars and things. I could use more
yes,
of them. I would like a lot more of them, but at least they're giving you the elements that you can use to learn. Are there ways to abuse that? Yes, and we'll get to that maybe. But just to go back, what we have now, I think, is a really good system for the time, and that's the point, right? The interviews that we did, Kim, back in our day, I remember I sat ringside with Connie Barton on Labradors. She was the rep. And who knew more about Labradors than Connie, right? She worked
right,
for
right.
Sandylands and Brent, Gwen Brody, all the good labs that she was surrounded with, and the kennel here in America, whose name now escapes me for a second. But anyway, um, we sat and talked about Labradors for the whole entry. And by the way, back then, again, these systems have to adjust for the era because it's not always the same. We had deep breed entries back then, big ones. So we could sit and watch Labradors for a couple hours at a regular show. And after we did that, it was Beagles was my next interview. And Connie and I walked down the hill. There weren't 5 million people applying. She had the time. We walked down the hill to the Beagle entry and we sat down. And I remember, and on Labradors, I was just, tell me everything you know. I mean, it was great, right? We get to Beagles and she's like, maybe you can help me with this breed. Because that's what my dad bred. And I'm sure she could help me too. So it was more of a two-way there. But those were different things you couldn't do today just because of logistics. But did you have to take the hands-on test during that program? That might have been,
Yes.
you did?
I did. I did. I loved the hands-on.
Me
I
too.
thought I was sad when it went away
Yeah.
because I can remember distinctly doing Newfoundlands in Southern California. And Kim Griffith was there and always had beautiful noofs. And we had 4 really, really nice noofs. And the rep was there. And we would, look at them, examine them, move them. And then you had to say, okay, 1 through 4, how are you placing these and why? So it was, a better version, kind of the hands-on that we have in the seminars are great. But you've got a whole room full of people, everybody's got their little, boards out, and and then you have to say your reason why, but you don't get the time and you don't get the individualization that we used to get with that. And I thought it was one of the best programs that we had, and then it went away, and I was sad about that. And I think a lot of people were, because you really had to know your stuff. I think there's also a couple of areas that could be tweaked for what's going on right now. And I haven't applied for a long, long time. So, but there's what they have added is on the rare breeds that you have to be listed 6 times. And if none of them show up, then you can go forward. Because we used to be stuck. Let me tell you, back in
Oh,
the
yeah.
90s, we were stuck for a year, 2 years trying to get around this kind of thing. I'm not, still it's difficult. If you're not well known and people don't know who you are, you're probably not going to get listed 6 times, right? For some of these birds. The other thing that I see, and this is just in talking to newer judges that come to me for advice or whatever, the fact that you're all excited, you're going to get your interview with the rep, you go to the show, and you've got a major in Barbet. Wow, we have a major in Barbet. And you get to the show, you've spent the money to get there, and you know what? 2 absentees. You don't get an observation. That needs to be fixed. That needs to be addressed, I think.
There's a lot of those adjustments, but there's so much history to draw from. And again, I really do. We couldn't do my hands-on was 8 Springer Spaniels in English Springers. And the breed wasn't decided by what I was applying for as much as it was where can you get the dogs and the breeder. Because the way it
Yes,
worked, I
yes.
recall, we had to have one judge, an all-breed judge, and that was Bob Stein in my case. Frank Harrer was the rep, who was a brilliant dog man and a great guy. He pretty much pulled it together. And then there was a breeder too. So it was an all-breed judge, a rep, and a breeder. That's the team. And we were in that, they were in there with us. They went over the dogs too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's different. And then you have a long conversation. At the seminars, when you do that, I'm rushing the whole time writing everything down. It's not a two-way conversation, but they do ask questions after. Did you also find out at the new seminars at the clipboard that someone's always looking over your shoulder, seeing what you did? Sometimes it turned out like 5 people back there. Hey, I'm not that smart. Leave me alone. But
Well,
but
I can certainly understand that with your history and depth of dogs and the dog game in general. I can see you'd have a whole room of people behind you, but that's a whole
why not?
other thing, right? I think that, that you just hit on a very important point in that the old time hands-on, we have trouble now, even with the seminars, the AKC seminars and the, and DJAA seminars. It's hard to get people to bring their dogs. I mean, if they're not already entered at the show, whatever, it's difficult. So that's probably one of the reasons why it went away, is that it's the difficulty of getting a judge to come and the rep to come and the breeds to come, which is a
Yeah,
shame because it was very valuable, I think.
it was.
Yeah,
On the East Coast, we had a little probably bigger depth in those breed entries and we could pull those together, but still logistically, you've got to get the judge who has time off. You've got to get the breeder. You got to get the dogs to come down. It was a hot day, and these poor dogs had to go back and show before or after too. So
exactly.
logistically, it wasn't perfect. But the point is, today, you just don't have, even if you could do it logistically and figured it out, you don't have the number of dogs there in
Yeah,
every breed to do this.
yeah.
So anyway, we're going to take a quick break here and come back with more of Still Standing, talking about the judging approval process, the old and the new, and maybe something in the future. I'm Wayne. This is Kim. We're still standing. We'll be right back. We were talking off camera a lot this morning and on the breaks about things that we saw in the past that were great. One of the things that I'm not sure again if this could be done, but we had when I was there in the early 90s, I was vice president of communications. Jim Edwards was in genetics. Maribeth was in maybe education or something. Maribeth has always been an amazing employee there, right? The late Ron Rella, super guy, toy breeds was his thing. John Mandeville, a great all-around dog man. And we were the committee that approved the applications for forwarding to the board for their vote. We didn't vote, but the applications came in. Now remember, I mentioned the titles and areas because none of us worked in judging ops. None of us worked in the dog show department. Um, they just, whoever it was, I think it was Bob Maxwell, the president, decided these are the 6 dog people that he thought had the most knowledgeable input because of history or where we lived, whatever the hell it was. We were in the room together because we could discuss dogs and we knew people.
Sure.
So when an application came in, say it was Las Apsos from New Mexico, and we'd say, "Do you know anybody, Maribeth? Do you know anybody, Jim? Who knows these people?" Nobody. Okay, but I do know somebody in New Mexico who's good with dogs, or I knew a Laza guy from Pennsylvania who may know this guy. We'd call those people because they had the list of questions they had to answer. They'd filled out the application. The only reason they could fail on the application part is if they spelled Dalmatian incorrectly. ION,
Yeah, but see,
out, you're out.
now we
But
can complain, and we can say spell check. Wasn't
yeah,
me.
right. Not
Wasn't me.
Dalmatio. They didn't come from Dalmatio. They came from Dalmatia. Anyway, um, but we then get the bigger picture, right? We talked to the reps too, if we had access to them. We did. There weren't many, and most of them were, they weren't spread as thin as they are today. And we'd get that information. We'd give them the whole gestalt, right? Here's the application. It's approved as it is, right? But you need to know these other bits because the people, this is back then, the board members, uh, they didn't go to the shows as much and they didn't really know who the judges were or who was good or who was bad. We used the reps for that. And we also used our own because we were out there every weekend. We went to shows every weekend. We had no life. We were like reps. We were always at the shows, even though we were in New York at staff all week. So there was more input collectively that went to the board for their vote then. And I don't know if there's a committee of dog people anymore that does that. I just don't know. I don't think so, but maybe there is, and maybe there's another way that I don't know about. But I can tell you that committee was maybe because it was the personalities and the people and the passion we had, but that worked. That really worked. And it helped the board make a more informed decision. And the board doesn't want to not make a informed decision. They want to know all they can. And it was better than blacking out the names and making people guess. We wanted the bigger picture. We wanted to know, like, I don't know when I read an application of CEUs now, if that person's worked for, Peter Green and terriers for 20 years, plucking terriers and hand stripping things. Maybe that's just osmosis, but I think you're going to learn about terriers doing that. There is a place, they tell me, on the application where you can add a letter saying these are special things that I think you should consider. I don't know who considers them. I just don't know. And maybe that's great. Maybe I should do it more. But so we had 1,000 points of light. We had hands-on exams. None of those things can be done anymore just because the way the sport is spread so thin. We had the committee. You'd have to have enough dog people working in the same office to do that. I don't know if that exists. I mean, people who've been around for generations or whatever. I don't know how all that works now, but there was those elements, the Len Brumby walking around, picking people. Some of those
I'm
elements.
gonna something real quickly here. Talking about that committee and the names that you mentioned, all of which I know, except I never did meet Mr. Brumby, but they're all good, solid dog people. They're all breeders. They've all bred top winning dogs. They've shown top winning dogs that they probably bred themselves. I mean, how many of the people that are, if there is a committee or even in the judging offices, how accomplished are they? Have they bred? Have they been breeders? Have they ever shown top winning dog? Are they aware of what a campaign is like these days? That's all real important. And I think all those people that you mentioned previously, all were really solid, good dog people with experience behind them. We don't know anymore. We don't know who even at the board level, what success they've had, what they've done, what they've accomplished. I mean, there's very little communication about that. And maybe that needs to
Yeah.
be
And
addressed.
the board members can't all be dog experts. You need business acumen, you need other skills.
You bet. You
But
bet.
we didn't I mean, right now you've got the Brumbies out there. They're called AKC field reps. And I don't
Yes.
think
Yeah.
anybody knows more about who can judge and who can't than the reps. They just know. They
Agreed.
watch it every weekend.
Agreed.
The way Jim and I, when all those that Maribeth, we were at shows every weekend watching these things. The reps do that now, and they cover many more shows than we could. And they know more than we could, quite frankly, because they're in this knee deep every weekend doing this. So can those elements, and by the way, we are saying that we are both saying that we really like this new judging approval process for what it is
Yes.
and the time it is. My
Yes.
point is the human element has been taken out of a little bit. And I think that's been done for this thing about fairness. Everyone's on the same playing field. Is everyone really the same? No.
No. No. Definitely
Um,
not.
you know, anyway, a topic for another day, but the human element might be added back in somehow. I haven't really thought it through, but we were talking before, Kim, about the field reps and their expertise in these things.
Well, they also are learning, by the way, especially, and I think we've got a really good group of field reps right now. And we have had over the years, many times, great groups of field reps. And they learn when they're new, just like us, a new judge, new field rep. Maybe maybe they specialized in handling hounds only, or maybe they were only showing working dogs. So when they sit down for an interview, I can remember when I sat down with Florence Males, God bless her, great rep, about Malamutes. And she said, I'm here to learn from you, about this breed. And so they're learning when they're sitting down with a really accomplished breeder, longtime breeder, successful breeder that finally decides that they want to judge, they're learning. And so that they're not, that input is invaluable to them. So
Mhm.
indeed, I agree. We need to rely on them more. Their opinion needs to count. I don't know how the process goes as far as, people getting groups or getting into different programs, but certainly I think the reps' opinion should be counted very heavily.
I do too. And I don't mean to discount. And by the way, Tim, obviously, Tim Thomas in Judging Ops, he has tremendous depth in dogs. And
Right.
he's second generation. He was a handler. He's bred dogs. But that's one person, right? Does he have a team that he can rely on to also group up and help? He's got some great
Yeah.
clerks in there, and there are some dog people in that group that I know. But is it enough and how they done? Maybe, and I'm not talking about, there's no shortcomings of that department. It's just a different sport and a different time. And now our time is we have the dog people out in the field where maybe they should be, right? But we
Right.
have really smart reps, and no one reads the standards more than they do because they have to test on the standards every day. No
Sure.
one talks to
Sure.
more breeders than they do. And they know, and they're not allowed to say, but they sure, I'll guarantee you, if you get any six of them together, they go down a list and say, this guy shouldn't be judging, this person shouldn't be judging, get that. Oh, by the way, this guy should have more. They could do that in their sleep.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to incorporate more of that feedback and to make it count, not just to receive it, but to make it count. I don't know. I just don't know. We love this system. We're just looking for some human touch elements to add to it. But before we wrap that up, we could talk about that for years, right, Kim? I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I do want to say that there's a curious rule that I'm very concerned about. Do you know about this, Kim? It's a real serious thing. This
It's
rule,
very serious.
terrible.
Yeah. It's cool.
It's a curious
Yeah.
rule. Evidently, and I'm not sure when this happened. This is so, I mean, it's hard, I'm scarred from this. Years ago, not too many, there was a couple shows where the cleanup crew had trauma. They needed counseling because when they came in, the grounds were full of teeth and testicles. They were everywhere, Kim. Teeth and testicles were everywhere. They'd rake, there'd be piles of, they were missing parts. And it happened evidently between breed judging and group judging.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first they'd thought maybe we should DNA these and give them back to the proper dogs. The parts are falling off. we don't know if it's diet, whatever, but they decided that instead that we would, as judges, check them again an after hour of the breed judging. So if you judge them in the breed and you judge them in the group, it could happen during that 20 minutes. They could lose testicles and teeth. So we have to
It,
recheck. We do. That's a great rule,
well,
isn't it?
and you could have judged the last beagle in the hound group at 1:15, and they're the first group in the ring. And so there you go. Like they walk 10 feet over to the group ring. I'm not sure where, the standard reply usually is you have to check for all disqualifying faults. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've already done that when you judge the breed, or you wouldn't have given them the breed in the first place. So I'm not sure when their teeth and testicles disappear or whatever, but it's an anomaly for sure.
It's very
Yeah.
sad. Those people are scarred for life, the cleanup crew. I think we should reach out to them about these missing parts. Maybe
Especially on a
were they black
Sunday.
market? Were they selling these things? Maybe black market, they were selling these things. I don't know. But I
On a
can tell
Sunday
you,
when everyone wants to go home and they're tired and it's no cut Sunday, and then you have someone completely re-examining every dog in the group,
yeah,
and you just want to kill yourself.
the deep body massage, then this. And then when they kneel, I like the ones that get down low to watch them move, because who can know what it could happen? I don't know. But that happens. But it's a serious thing. So we are required to do those things, and they tell us we have to check teeth and testicles. I'll do it because why not? I'm game. I asked this question, was it because the falling parts? Were there missing pieces? Evidently, that was a rumor, Kim. They were not rumor, they were not actually teeth and testicles. That was a rumor, is what it was. But they wanted to slow us down because some judges, and actually I'm serious about this, it shouldn't be a contest to see who can judge the fastest. And that's
That's
not
true.
cool.
That's true.
And that happens. I can get this done in 7 minutes. I got a plane to catch. I just broke my ass brushing and blow drying my dog for 3 months to show it to you. Give me a minute. So I think the
Yeah.
teeth and testicle check and the whole going over it twice is to slow the judges down in the group. That's the only feedback I've gotten that made a little bit of sense to me when I ask. So maybe that's it. But it is kind of funny, Once in a while, I'll open up and go, "Oh my God," just to freak the person out if I know them. But not usually.
Find one. Oh my God. Here's the thing. If you've done all the breeds, and that doesn't always happen depending on the size of the show, the entry, but if you've done all the breeds in that group that day, you pretty much know in your mind, unless they come up lame or something, the 4 to the 6 that you really like in that group is already in your mind, kind of
Right.
pre-picked. And so it sometimes is a waste of time to completely examine every dog again.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing about no cut Sunday, that's a funny expression and all, but really if you want to make a cut on Sunday, you should. Because maybe you can I can fly through them equal time for everybody, check all the parts, and still make a cut in a reasonable amount of time. Because, like you said, Kim, during the day we're thinking this one could be in there. You're
Yeah.
not placing
Yeah.
1 through 4. And sometimes you get them in there and there's a surprise, like, whoa, I didn't realize in this size ring, this dog looks so much better, or this surface, or the
Exactly.
weather, or he's happier, or whatever. So
Yeah.
those things clearly change, and you get a dog you hadn't even thought of that gets in, and one you were going to love that's out. So making a cut
It's a lot.
doesn't
That
have to
happens a
take a
lot.
year and
Yeah.
a half, right? Doesn't have to take a year and a half. The way I do it now is I make the cut on one side of the ring, and the dogs, I bring them, instead of stepping forward, I bring them over and halfway around. So now the dogs I'm keeping in are on my close side of the ring, starting in the middle. They're not at the front of the line. They're right in the middle of the ring, going from the middle back. So all the other ones go out, and then I just have to take these halfway around to line them up on the other side. That half loop in the big ring gives me plenty to see. So it cuts the time in half of the second cut big go rounds, but you can still see them a second time. Everybody's got their own way, but it shouldn't be you can never cut on Sunday, and it shouldn't be that you have to beat the clock, and it shouldn't be that you make flight reservations at 6:15 when you're judging a dog show. You should be able to
I
give them
agree.
that.
And a lot of clubs are putting that in their contracts that they want you to stay the night of the show, and or do not make a plane reservation before whatever time,
Oh,
because
good.
you've got to get there. There could be a traffic jam, whatever. So a lot of clubs are putting that in their contracts, and more power to them. I understand that. It's interesting because we have our 2 minutes. That's what we say, 2 minutes a dog. So what I do, and I started doing this many years ago, when they first come in the ring, what they want to do is they want to set their dogs up, all of them, and then you stare
Mhm.
at them and you look at them, and then you move them around. I don't allow them to do that anymore. They come in, I say, good morning. I'm always cheerful, good morning. I'm happy they're there, and I always am. Take them right around for me, please. And then, because they're going to come over there and you're going to see them all stacked up
Mm.
individually, then you're going to move them, and then they're going to be stacked up together as a group again. And you're probably saving at least a good minute
Yeah.
by not letting them stack them all up on the first go around. I don't, how do
Yeah.
you feel about that?
Well, we all have our ways, right? Uh, Someone who knows me too well and could be related to me said, Dad, Mr. Cavanaugh, sometimes I know that when you take a dog down and back, if you do the Olvis and creep up with the dog, you're just shortening his time to go around and not suffer. And I'm like, do I do that is it that obvious? And if you like him, you stand back and let them do their whole thing. And I had to correct that because but it did take 10 seconds off each dog times 27, 30 dogs, right? Adds up. But you
Yeah,
shouldn't
for
do that.
sure.
Don't do that. Don't do what I do. And now I tend to walk up a little bit on each one. Charlie just takes off flying, right? When they make their turn, they come back and there's Charlie, you know. But
Yeah,
he can process quick. Everybody's got their system. Charlie's got an amazing eye for doing these things quickly. Some people it takes time to think. We're all different, and it shouldn't be the same.
yes.
It shouldn't be a pride thing about how quick you can do something. There should be a shame thing about if you take too damn long, though. No one
I
wants.
agree. I
No one.
agree. And judges are just like exhibitors. We're all different. We all think differently. We all process things differently. So there you go. I mean, what make some people may consider a fault. Actually, that person, that exhibitor, that handler, they need that because that's how they are. That's how their mind goes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I have to watch where I put my hands because sometimes I'm doing that and looking at the hand like, I see this, right? This line here, you see, I'm looking at it like, yeah. I have to stop doing that too much too. No one knows except the handler or exhibitor or breeder, and they don't like it. And I'm just trying to explain myself. Anyway, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. I'm Wayne Cavanaugh. This is Kim Meredith, and we are still standing because we love doing this and we want to do it as often as we can for the Canine Chronicle. Again, thanks to Tom Gravy and Amy at the Canine Chronicle for their support. We'll see you here in a couple weeks. Hope all's well. Until then, Kim,
Yes, Wayne. Bye
bye. We'll see
See
you
you
next week.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.